All steps for man. Mark, science for mankind.
Let's go.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Eurasian edition of the UnFuckIt Discussion. It is Sunday morning, February 3rd. Yeah, welcome to February, everyone. A little more of January, apparently. We're just going to keep repeat. Yes, we're doing the Eurasian edition, which will be the first Sunday of every month. So everyone has that little, set it in your heads. All of our clan out there in Europe and in Asia and Australia, the first Sunday of every month, we will be going live at a time zone that's a little more easy for us to swallow instead of like the middle of the night, like usual. What do I say about this week? Fuck. What the fuck? That's what I say about this week. Just what the actual fuck? Like I always say, like I sound like a broken record every week. It's like we've had just the most insane week. But every week gets more insane. Every week gets more and more and more insane. You're just to the point of like, I can't even fathom what the shit is going on. I want to talk about some of the insanity this week. I had all my slides set up to show you the magnetosphere and everything, but yeah, then my computer crashed last night before I went to bed, and I've lost everything, and I slept in this morning. I only woke up 45 minutes ago, so pardon me. So I don't have the slides to show you, but we've seen crazy shit in the magnetosphere, and I will put a Transpicuous News out in the next day or so to run through some of the stuff that we're seeing. Yesterday, again, the helioplots, which is the earthquake registers, were off the charts again, and we saw some fucking epically strange shit in several places as a lead up to it, like entire graphs that were completely blacked out with lines, and not just in one place. Like, you know, it was like Guantanamo Bay, of all places, Tucson, Arizona, and then somewhere over in, was it China, Anne? I can't remember where the third place was. And then
the first day it was just Tucson and Guantanamo.
The first day was just yeah, and then but the second day there was another place. I don't want to say it was like Russia or China started doing strange shit on their graph, and then the next day, which is yesterday, all of them again, chung chung chung, being all triggered, showing something. When all of them are showing something at the same time, it doesn't matter if it was Barbados, China, Australia, Canada, they were all showing at the same time something happening. Hold on, I'm going to mute someone. There we go. We saw really strange anomalies on the magnetosphere. We had a couple of days this week where things seemed to calm down a little bit. Things, you know, it wasn't quite so constant. We saw the midnight blast disappear for 3 days, and I thought, oh, okay, that's it, we're done. Like whatever it was that was causing this blast to hit us at midnight every night, it must be past its trajectory or no longer geoeffective. Yeah, it happened again 2 nights ago. Not this past night, the night before. So that would have been midnight going into February 2nd. Again, massive fucking blast. And you have to sit there and go, what the hell? Just before we went live, Ron and I were talking about it, saying, like, we got to throw these things on the table and say, like, what the hell is going on? We had fireballs. So the comet asteroid, the asteroid that blew up over Cuba and blew up so big, it shattered windows when it exploded, when it hit the atmosphere. It was that big, and people were out collecting up pieces of rock. There's tons of videos and pictures showing people with pieces of meteorite. Yeah, we're talking epic strangeness, and we're going to get into the. I want to get into that discussion. I also want to get into the emotional, the mental, the physical. If you want to talk at the macro, micro of what we are feeling, because this week has been crazy for a lot of people. A lot of people have had, and myself included, had an insane fucking week. Oh, I just realized I don't have the chat open. Didn't even have the Zoom chat open. Hold on, here we go. We need to look at all this shit. We like, it's going to be a matter of, maybe it's going to sound like sometimes our shows are just repeats of each other as we go through and try and figure this shit out. But the way I see it, the only way we're going to get any answers right now is to just keep continuously bringing the pieces to the table and try and figure this shit out. I don't know. Like, I literally am at a loss at this point. One of the things that I talked about just before we went live is I've, of course, been really, really seriously re-looking at all the Nibiru type stuff, because you have a lot of people putting out videos saying that the geomagnetic anomalies and the electrical anomalies that we're experiencing on the planet, it's Nibiru, it's that, you know, or the planet X, if you will. And we've seen certain things that come up in the magnetosphere. So, for example, like I said, when we see massive geomagnetic anomalies, like these massive storms happening every single night at midnight, between midnight and 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, then you can say, okay, well, if there's two planetary bodies and they're orbiting, and it just so happens that at midnight they come into their closest proximity, for example, and that's what it is. But some nights that disappears. Some nights that we don't see that storm. So like I said, this week we had 3 nights last week where there was no big blast at midnight. Okay. And I thought maybe we've transited out of that and it's no longer as geo-effective. But then, like I said, February 2nd, the midnight going into, from the 1st into the 2nd, we had another one. It's like, oh, well, wait. We see on the magnetosphere, we're seeing the magnetic fields getting pushed upwards. But they're not always. Sometimes you see it being pushed downwards. Sometimes we're seeing the polar cap magnetic lines disconnecting from the north, and sometimes we're seeing it disconnecting from the south. It's, in my very unprofessional opinion, it's not always showing us the same thing, which to me says there must be other aspects. We can't just say it's a secondary or a third, pardon me, large body that's affecting us. There must be more to it than this. There has to be more to it than this, because otherwise there would be a constant, and we haven't found a constant yet. And yeah, Ben, good morning, Ben, or I should say good evening, Ben. Very, very late evening for Ben over there in Australia. Yeah, we have to, depends on what we're looking at. And this is what I want to bring to the table. Now, Ben, I know that you're going to want to talk about the planetary stuff. So we're definitely going to get into that. So, good morning, Ben. He takes a drag off his smoke before he says hello.
I mean, evening.
Good evening.
Morning, Ben.
I was trying to. Kia ora.
Are you with us? Or do we have a real bad lag?
Yeah, I just was watching. Yeah, and I stop as soon as my computer says your internet connection is unstable, because obviously I just sound worse than I already do. Yeah, universe. Wow. What a fucking ride. What a ride. It's getting quite interesting. It's getting quite interesting. And just to throw out there, as I do, it all depends on what we're looking at. So heaps of people have probably listened to this dude for ages, because he's like been around for ages, but I'm revisiting, what's his name? Hang on a second. Rick. How do I say it? Rick Levine. Is it Levine or Levine? Shut up, Adam Hudson. Rick Levine. And he's an astrologer. And some of the stuff that he's been rapping about, he's just had a recent interview come out as well. but it's very interesting because he kind of put it into a context that I went, oh, that's really good. And he said, so when quantum physics come out, they did these tests and they tried to show that a particle could be a particle or a wave, right? But the more that you look at the particle, the less of the wave you lose. The more you look at the wave, the less of the particle you see. So he's like, are planets particles or waves? Oh. And then depending on how we look at them, yeah. So when we look at them, they're a planet or a particle. But in their cycle, they have waves. So you have Mercury that goes around at its time frame. There's, Mars that goes around at its time frame. And Earth, and I know Earth's, it's 365 days around the sun. And then you've got Saturn, which is 30. But what do they put out as a pulse? And then what is their pulse or wave that they're putting out depending on where they are in their orbits? And that kind of gave me a little bit of a brain aneurysm, because if you really think about that, it's a very interesting topic. So like what you were just saying before with like the magnetosphere and that sort of stuff going this way, that way, and the other, it gets real interesting.
So in other words, you're just going to fry my brain this morning. And I've got Groot here on my lap who's like killing me at the moment. Why are you squashing me, my 100-pound laptop? Well, this is it. And this is, I keep talking again, we've got the broken measuring stick, is we look at aspects. Well, we're open to all the new science and we're open to all the new research, and we're always researching continuously electric universe and plasma discharges, et cetera, we still tend to put the variables in by old scientific method, i.e. exactly what Ben just said. What's a planet? How does it react? How does that equate if we start looking at quantum physics? How does that equate when we start looking at things like stars? Again, we don't know what stars are. Like, again, it's like our sun. They keep telling us our sun is this, and we're all going, no, it's not. But at the same time, sometimes when we're building kind of mental equations in our head and trying to correlate the information, we unconsciously are using old descriptive terms and trying to define it in those ways, and that doesn't necessarily fit.
And or not old enough.
or not old enough.
Because you've got to remember that the planet, because the planets were gods. The planets were held as gods. Because you could say and
that
those influences
because of their influences were so strong on us.
Well, that was what they were deemed as, right?
Yeah.
Because of their influence. But then they became planets. They just become these objects that float around, and we lose contact. Whereas some of the first sciences are, oh, here goes the internet. Some of the first sciences were based on astrology.
Yeah.
That the influences that the planets had, right? So our viewpoint has become very ephemeral, like a snowflake, because our lifespan is how we look at time. But as we know that Uranus and Neptune, those things take like 120 odd or 200 odd years to come around. So then, like, there's, Saturn
it's cyclical
will have whatever it is. Well, yeah, but then the thing is like Saturn takes 30 years to go around the sun, right? So you can see it 2, maybe 3 times in a lifetime, whereas something like Uranus takes even longer. But then there's these conjunctions that those 2 planets have as well, and they might be every 50 years or 30 years, and they create influence.
There was a really good analogy put out, and I'll be fucked if I can remember what video it was. Okay, group, now you got to get down. You got to get down. You're crushing me. There you go. You go lay down. Go lay down. Good boy. You go lay down. Sorry, dog is literally crushing me at the moment. And it talked about the electric universe, and they talked about the fact of each of our planetary bodies, and not just our planetary bodies. We're not just talking between the sun and the earth and the sun and Jupiter and the sun and Saturn, that each of these, even the moons, have almost like an umbilical cord, if you will, where the energy is flowing. There's a intimate connection between the sun and earth, which we of course know, but then also between the sun and Jupiter, the sun and Uranus, but then there's also one between earth and Jupiter and earth and Uranus. And then it goes outside of the solar system, which is what makes it really, really interesting.
And don't forget,
it's not just our solar system that's interconnected. Like we have then these grand connections that connect us to, for example, the central sun, if you will, and all the big planetary bodies and stars that are out there.
And don't forget to connect it to the zodiac, because they were major markers. And yet, when you go back quite far, they are markers for something that's actually behind them. Mm. The zodiacs are actually only marker points for something behind them.
Mm-hmm. And this is it. It's. I think we all go through little phases where, for example, you study astrology. Even if it's just on the extreme surface of like, oh, I'm an Aries and my moon is in Taurus, that kind of shit. And some of us go in and you read up a little more about it. Oh, this is kind of interesting. And then you tend to kind of walk away from that. Because, of course, you got mainstream science and most people are like, oh, astrology is all fucking bullshit. Oh, it's like just seriously woo-woo silliness. But then, the more you dig into this
there's
shit...
the crossover. Well, you've got astrology and astronomy.
Yeah.
And astronomy's what's pushed, whereas astrology is actually for lack of better words, the science of universe. Astro logos.
Well, it defines the interactions more. Like astronomy, to put it in simple terms, it's like astronomy is like, look, there's Jupiter. Oh, look, there's Neptune. Oh, look, there's a moon. Whereas astrology, I want to say more clearly, defines the interactions between them.
And the effects on us.
And the effects on us. There's Jupiter, and Jupiter is here, and Neptune is here, and therefore the effect is, right? So it makes it's. I'm wishing I had all my I used to have a really great collection of astrology books, and I kind of wish I had those again, because I don't have them anymore. They're off somewhere in some country somewhere around the world. I don't even remember where they've been left. We have to relook at this stuff now. But like I said, the problem that I see personally is that astrology, as we know it today, and I'm not going to comment on, obviously, on what the Mayans were doing and the Egyptians, etc. Astrology that we know today really only takes into consideration, for the most part, our solar system. There is no, that I've been able to find, real information that talks about our galaxy, that kind of goes outside our little local village here. Here's our little, local village. Raphael's horary astrology, by which every question relating to the future may be answered. Good. Tell me what's good in the future, because I'm getting really fucked off by it all right now. We don't seem to have anything that describes our greater neighborhood. As in, how do these close stars, etc., also affect us? What's Ben's showing us? Table of contents. Symbols explained planetary aspects of the nature of aspects and of the nature and qualities of the zodiac. Yeah. So I don't know, guys. This is another piece that I think we have to put back on the table. We have to start looking at this kind of stuff again. What we're seeing right now, what we're seeing take place in our magnetosphere, in ourselves, not just planetary on our planet, but within ourselves, is this some kind of grand planetary alignment that we just don't comprehend right now because it's external of our little local village called, our Milky Way? I don't know. I wish we could beam a couple of ancient Mayan astronomers up on board. Could we just, I don't know, get a medium in here, see if we can't contact some ancient Mayan astrologers and say, hey, dudes, could you want to explain what we're seeing here? Because I think perhaps they would have had more precise answers. Yeah, Anne, exactly. Because the shit we're seeing right now is insane.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's that? I can't hear. Is it Amina? Is that you?
Yeah.
You may need to get a little closer to your mic, love. You're a little bit quieter.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, so most astrologers are looking for what's going to happen on the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn. And because there's an eclipse at the same time, there's two eclipses at the same time, they say this is going to be a major event. Now, every time Pluto and Saturn have conjuncted, there has been a major event on the Earth.
Can you define that, Amina? Like when you say major event, give me an example. What kind of major type events?
An invasion of a country, a change of borders, a world war, or something that is historically important. But it doesn't affect the entire planet. It affects one area. So what is going to happen is that Pluto and Saturn are going to conjunct at the end of this year in December. I think it's December 26th, and there's going to be an eclipse on that day. So we look at where that eclipse is going to fall. So where is that area on the planet where most of this is going to take place? And I happen to be living in that area where the eclipse is going to take place. There's going to be another eclipse in January, I think it's January 5th or something, in 2020. Now, this would be more important for the world. I think I lost my connection.
No, I can hear you. We can hear you, Amina.
Okay.
And why is the second one more important for the world?
Because the sun is closest to the conjunction at that time.
Interesting. So we're talking December 26th, 2019, and then January 5th, 2020.
Now, this could relate to revolutions, but because Uranus is moving into Taurus, it could be geomagnetic, because Taurus rules Earth, the ground, and Uranus is electricity.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. Okay, that's really, really interesting. So here's the thing. Putting this call out here now to anyone who has this astrology knowledge, what changed? Did something change? Did a conjunction happen or an alignment happen right at the very beginning of this month, like January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, right in there, that we're still under the effect of? Is there something that we can specifically point to and say, this happened January 2nd?
Yes.
Okay, which was?
Yeah.
The sun passed over the area where Pluto and Saturn are right now, which is, there's a bit of an orb, a window, where Saturn and Pluto are not quite together yet.
Okay.
And the sun passed over Saturn, and through the middle and then it passed over Pluto and passed. So now it's fading away.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so sorry guys, I've got a.
What date did you say, D?
I'm looking specifically at January 2nd is the first day that we saw the massive blast at midnight. That was just insane, which is why I'm using that as a marker. I'm not necessarily saying that's the marker, but I'm using that as a marker because I can say, okay, that was the date when that first took place.
I can give you the exact coordinates of every
Oh,
day.
yeah.
Ben, I can't see whatever you're trying to show us. I can't see jack shit. All I see is a big white square.
Yeah, it's a zodiacal circle for that day. But yes, keep going, Amina. You're on it.
I'm just looking for the file where I've got all the, got it. So all the dates of the, so if we look from 2018, December.
Yeah.
Now every position of a planet is marked by an astrological sign and a degree of that sign. So there's like 30 degrees for every sign. So if I could tell you that the sun it entered Capricorn on December 22nd.
Okay.
And on December 22nd, Saturn was at 10 degrees Capricorn. So the sun has 10 days to meet Saturn. So that is getting closer and closer. These energies were getting stronger and stronger. Pluto is at 20 degrees Capricorn. So it's 10 degrees away from Saturn. So in the sun cycle, that's 10 days. So it took until Saturn, the sun conjuncted Saturn on January 1st, 2019, or January 2nd. January 2nd, 2019, the sun and Saturn were exactly conjunct. And that's when it got really trippy, right?
And then it's continued though, because obviously I'm assuming then the sun and Saturn they conjunct exactly on that date, and then they start.
And the orb of the two outer planets could be considered 10 degrees, and they're 9 degrees away from each other. So the sun conjuncted Pluto on the 11th of January. And then you
need to keep track of these dates.
So we've got the 2nd of January, it hit Saturn, and on the 11th of January, it hit Pluto, and then it started to fade away. But everything in between is going to be potent because the sun is moving between both planets. And I did a test. I looked at where is the night side of Earth when GMT is midnight, because that's when the charts would go really, really wild. Midnight Greenwich Meridian. And the opposite place where it's high noon is Fiji. So I did a chart for Fiji.
Okay.
And I looked at what's happening. Where is high noon? Where are the planets, the sun, Saturn, and Pluto at high noon in Fiji between January 1st, when it started to go really wild, and about January 7th, when it was like still really potent. And it's exactly spot on high noon, which means exactly midnight on the other side of the world, when all this was measured. That is the same time that the Earth has turned, so that we have these kinds of energies hitting us exactly at that time.
And I'm wondering if we could go back and then look at, for example, things like we've seen all these eruptions that are happening.
Yeah, I keep track.
If you know the whole Pacific Ring of Fire, would be closest, because if when you talk about noon, it's going to be obviously there's going to be fluctuations on either east and west side, but that is going to be more when you talk about midnight UTC. That area of the world is going to be mostly directly sun facing, and we see the eruptions of all the volcanoes and all the events that have happened along the Ring of Fire. There's been some substantial events.
Well, we're looking at the moon as well, because the moon has to take a full cycle.
As well as the forest fires.
So when most of the earthquakes are happening, the moon is involved. It's either very full, or it's making a alignment with Uranus, which is very electrical. And it's, it depends on how different planets are configured in, even if they're far away from each other, are they on the same degree in different signs? So if the moon moves around, it affects a lot of things like, what has been happening. The Earth is pulsating more when the moon is full.
Yeah. So is there, I mean, literally, this is when we almost need to pull a team together of people who, like Amina and Jules, who are doing all the astrology, to lay out a pattern of almost a timetable. Say, take, for example, the last 2 months, laying out this, and then looking at the specifics, as in geomagnetically, we see an event happen at 3 o'clock in the morning UTC on this date. Where is the opposite directly sun facing, and is there at the same time a directly linked event, whether it's a volcano, an earthquake, a massive forest fire, transformers blowing up? Now, it's really, really interesting that we're seeing most of the transformer explosions are happening in North America, that we're hearing about, obviously, and South America. Like we saw the one that was in Brazil that was huge, which would be more daylight facing, not exactly at noon, but it would be more daylight facing than it would be, for example, where we are in UTC. Here in Central Europe, I'm on the UTC line because of daylight savings time at the moment. So, and I'm seeing different events. So, for example, I always talk about that midnight event, but there are other times that are noted in my head. 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night. UTC are a very common time for us to see another type of event or a build-up. Even if it's not, you'll see it be calm. Time will be calm, calmer, and then 5 p.m., 5 a.m., 8 p.m., 8 a.m. seem to be kind of like pinpoint spots where we see a huge shift in the geomagnetic, where either it gets very, very quiet, or most often, all of a sudden you'll see a lot of activity when things have been quiet for hours. So, I mean, this is a massive amount of work. Like if we were going to try and lay this out, this would be a massive, massive amount of work, almost working on it as like a day by day, like doing a daily chart. But it's something we could definitely do. I mean, I know this is between all of us. We've definitely got the know-how to be able to maybe pull this together. But it's a piece, again, that we talk about that, sorry, I've got something in my eye, that mainstream science refuses to look at, right? And it's really, really interesting. Nick was watching yesterday, the day before, he was watching Joe Rogan interviewing a physicist from England. And a relatively young guy, i.e. he wasn't like, one of these old, Stephen Hawking types. And he apparently, Nick said, he's kind of like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of England, if you will, the talking head. And he's going through, and I'm listening. I listened to about 15 minutes of it, and I'm just listening to this stuff, and I'm like, it's all old. Like everything he's talking about, every time he tries to draw a relationship between this and this, etc. Pardon me, it's all old shit. There's none of it takes into account any of this kind of stuff. Like they'll keep talking about, and of course he's talking dark matter. Oh, dark matter. Well, we know that it makes up 75 or 25% of the universe, but we don't know what it is, and we can't find it. Well, then maybe that's because it doesn't exist. And you know, I just sat there, and it's, when you do watch those interviews, you're like stunned at the amount of ignorance, quite frankly, like literally straight up ignorance, that they cannot see outside their little tiny frame of reference.
Well, that's that whole thing. The closer you look at the particle, the less of the wave you see.
Exactly.
See, the other thing is with these influences, they're not just necessarily like earthquakes and volcanoes and weather and snowstorms and blizzards and floods and droughts. There's also like Venezuela / USA and
France.
stuff like that occur. Exactly. You know, the planets are rulers of certain influences and certain elements, and that is a huge part of things. I mean, we've got like the bomb, which is, I think it's Australia's, I'm not sure, weather broadcasting meteorological thing, right? And they're sitting there going, you know, broadcasting the world, oh, Adelaide's just had 46.6 degrees Celsius, oh, the hottest on record, you know. And it's like, we found newspaper articles from 1914 stating that Sydney, like through a 55-year pattern, the minimum temperature was 37.6, but the sort of mediums were 51 to 60 degrees Celsius. No, these weren't in Fahrenheit. Yeah. And these were in newspaper articles from 1914. Like,
so they're lying.
Completely. Like, one of the guys that does some of the freelance stuff over here, he actually rang the bomb, and they were like, so, you've just recorded the hottest temperature and da-da, and they're like, yeah. And he goes, what about I can't remember what it was. What about the temperature in 1910 when it was 51.5? And they were like, oh, except then.
What?
So, like, yeah, but see, then the other thing is, is like these planets that have control over influences start allowing this shit to seep out. So there's the media will fall apart because Mercury and some of the communication planets are like coming into full swing, and it's like, nah, motherfuckers, you have got to speak clarity now. And if they're not going to speak it, people are going to see it. You know, it's like the stock market crashes have all been on
Exactly.
have all been on certain conjunctions. The wars have all been on certain conjunctions. Revolutions have happened on all sorts of conjunctions. Like, I can't remember what the conjunction was. I think it may have been a Saturn Uranus, and it was like, that was when the internet came out in that year. And all these different things, when you go back over a long period of time, like you go back and it's like when Constantinople fell, when Rome fell, when the Visigoths got taken over by them trying to do, all of these things happened on massive conjunctions, huge planetary and zodiacal alignments, that whether they're influences or whether they're the things that are ingrained in us, that's when we do shit, or whatever it is. It's like what we were saying, it's like grand solar minimums seem to be technological bursts or
Renaissance.
Sociological bursts.
Yep.
Whereas grand solar maximums are the opposite. It's more like industrial and and that side of things.
Okay,
So
hold on.
and there's all these correlations.
Yeah, well, and this is it. I was just going to comment on the fact that, for example, the stock market, the crashes always happen on certain planetary alignments, certain conjunctions, certain moon phases all line up. And it's like clockwork. Like, you can literally track that. Anyone who's got even the smallest ability at astrology can track that. It's a set pattern to the point of back in 2000 and when would that have been? 2013. There was a guy on mainstream, like mainstream talking, who was like on RT.com, but we're talking mainstream, talking about, well, the last time we had a planetary alignment like this is when the stock market crashed in 2008. And this was like, he actually said it out loud, and I was like, wow, because I had just been researching exactly those pieces. Amina, do you want to show something? Pardon me. Oh, excuse me. Amina, did you have something that you wanted to show a screen share? I mean, I can pull up this link if you want. Hold on, let me open the link. Let's see how this is going to work well. Okay. Bear with me here. Okay, I have the link open that Amina just posted. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay, Amina, do you want to walk us through what you wanted to show us on this? No, we can't hear you, Amina. You're muted. Ah, fuck. Hold on. Let me see if I can help Amina here. Manage participants. Unmute. You're not unmuting. Why are you not unmuting? There. Try now, Amina.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. There we go.
Okay, on this link, we've got historical dates where we've got Pluto, Saturn triggering history happening for a few dates going back to, go back to 1800s.
Do you want me to scroll down? Just tell me when you want me to scroll.
All right, I can't see yours. Hang on.
Can you see the screen?
Not yet. I've lost it. Where is it? What's going on? Oh, there. I have to enlarge it. All right. So Saturn and Pluto causing historical events. We can see that a lot of people have studied this. So there should be a lot of links to this. And this site, I think it goes back to 1800s, what's happening. So it tells you how, go down a bit. Scroll down a bit. It tells you how Saturn and Pluto are aligned. And not only when they're conjunct, but also when they have squares and when they have trines and oppositions. So we see that there are events in history that happen, but they don't happen everywhere. So I haven't read through the whole article. I was looking for something for Ron because he's asking, have we got anything? So I'm going to pull up a few more and find some more data on all the events that are listed. But Ben has posted something.
Really interesting.
And in the group, there's a YouTube video of that guy, that astrologer Rick, who is giving a talk, and he gives a lot of examples in that talk. He talks about when the Moors invaded Spain. He talks about the First World War. That was the last time that there was a Pluto-Saturn conjunction, I think. It was First World War, which is major.
Yeah, geocentric conjunction, 3 triggers, October 4th, 1914 through May 19th, 1915.
Which is the First World War.
Yep. Interesting. Okay, so here, Ben, do me a favor. In Messenger, when we're finished here, I'm gonna stop the share now. In Messenger, send me the link to that video so I don't lose the link, and I'll post that with the archive of this. So this is it. So again, don't look at this as astrology. Look at it as electrical and magnetic conduits. Look at it. This is now, we're talking about spark gaps, and we're talking about connectivity between various planets lining up and the electrical and magnetic effects of those alignments. And if I can throw something in here, we could even take it to the point of saying, if you want to even look at it digitally, as kind of like a digital aspect, because we've talked about the simulation. Oh, Ben is like, no. If you want to talk about it, I'm going to go there. Sorry, Ben. If you want to look at it as an aspect, you could say things, for example, of these planetary connections are like programming. And therefore, when you have certain planetary alignments, it sets in motion a piece of program that sets this in place. When these program pieces connect, you have a war, because that's what the programming says. When these pieces connect, influence, whatever, you have a financial crash. This is the piece of programming that comes into play. And I want to, sorry, Ben, just hold on. I want to put this into the perspective of the new video games that we see now. Like these new video games that we see that are so open-ended that you create as you go through. You're literally creating shit because of the algorithms that are written into the game. That you can create something to happen in that world that you've created that has never been seen before. That is not programmed into the game, but is happening because when you take this step and this step and this step, it creates this point of contact, which then puts in place this piece of programming, which therefore makes this happen in front of you. And each step can make a variation in the programming. So I just want to throw that out there as another piece of this, because we've talked about the concept of a simulated reality and the whole Sims thing, which is still freaking me the fuck out. I just want to say, because my daughter's still playing Sims. So there's an aspect to this that could be translated into that thought process, into that concept. Yeah, you are the avatar observer of the construct game program. Exactly, Ron. Exactly. So I'm not ready to take that off the table, because I can see how these pieces could be pieces of the programming.
What you are referring to, Danny, is an if or and statement in programming, which says, if A or B happens, then it'll go to this other logical step in the programming. Now, although speaking on astrology, there's an episode of the Orville that's called All the World is a Birthday Cake, and where they come upon this world where astrology rules their lives, like how they're, how they interact with each other, if it's a really good episode, and
I have to watch that show. I have to watch that show.
It's really good show. I love it. I mean, almost every time I laugh so out loud, I'm almost like, dying. So, yeah. So.
Well,
okay.
Yeah. These are the pieces. These are the pieces we throw on the table here. I don't know. I want to look at the physical aspects, though. We've seen...
And it's called the Orville.
Yeah, the Orville. The show's called the Orville. And it's apparently... Nick just sat down and watched, like, every episode that there was last week. While he was sick, and he said it's really entertaining, and it's kind of like almost a knockoff of Star Trek, but it's a little funnier but thing, like they get into some, like, kind of Star Trek Next Generation gets into some interesting.
Yeah, but it goes beyond what it goes beyond what Star Trek would tackle, like issues.
Yeah. So. We see the influence on the physical. So we're going to talk about the macro, if you will. So we're seeing things that are continuously happening, playing out, such as the electrical events. Again, we had a whole pile more transformers blowing in the last week and a half. massive lightning storms. Ben posted a picture, I think yesterday or the day before, of the lightning over the volcano in Chile. That is spectacular. Like, that's a once in a lifetime photo. And it's been like I had a friend of mine say, like, no, they backtracked it. Like, this is actual. It's not Photoshopped. This is an actual. Someone captured this of the volcano exploding and these massive electrical discharges that were happening above it. It is truly spectacular. I'll have to go try and find that picture again. We are seeing the magnetic influence. We are seeing it through the graphs and watching. We're seeing the physical, i.e. we're seeing the weather that is just epically fucked at the moment. We're seeing it in the events that are happening continuously. There is a shifting going on the planet. Some of it is become, if I can define it under two stages, some of it has been the gradual increase. So in other words, weather events such as snow in Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia, snowstorms happening in Saudi Arabia. Well, we've seen these kind of happening over the last few years. Floods happening in places like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia just had another massive flood. So we've seen there's been this gradual increase, strange shifting of the weather patterns over, let's say, the last 4, 5, 6 years. But then we're also seeing this dramatic that happened this year. So from somewhere between this year, December, mid-December, going into right up till now, pardon me, with the Arctic weather, with the massive snowstorms, with the massive heat waves, with the massive fires as well. Like Ben was saying the other day, Tasmania is basically, the Isle of Tasmania is on fire at the moment, apparently. People in North America aren't hearing about this. People in North America aren't hearing about what's happening in other places. When we're seeing this increase of measurable physical effects that are not normal. So for example, I can talk about Morocco when we lived in Morocco. In August, September of 2015 in Morocco, there was a snowstorm in the Sahara. Now this wasn't December, January. Remember that Morocco's on the northern part. So August, September is summer, just barely going into autumn. There was a snowstorm. And the Moroccans were like, what the fuck? Like, to get snow in the Sahara does happen occasionally in January, February. It certainly doesn't fucking happen. And you certainly don't, like, there was an epic rainstorm that happened in the Sahara in August. And all the Moroccans that we know were like, what the hell happened? Like, people were going to the mosques and seriously fucking praying because they're like, it doesn't rain in the Sahara in August ever. Like, never. And one of our friends is like, he said something to the long, like, his grandfather was just like, never, my family, no one has ever, like, this has never ever happened before in generations that I've heard about. So it's not just the lies and bullshit like Ben was talking about, where they're like, oh, it's the hottest it's ever been, except for this date and this date and this date and this date and this date. We have events happening that have never happened before. Things like I joked and said the snowstorm that happened in Vietnam, what it was like, was that 2017? Snowstorm in Vietnam. And like the poor Vietnamese, I had a friend of mine who was down there backpacking going, the people are losing their shit. They're like, what's this white fucking shit falling from the sky? Is there a volcano erupting? Because they had never ever seen snow. Never in the history of, like, their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents and all of a sudden they got like this much snow on the ground in a season that's supposed to be the dry season. Like, it's not even the rainy season, it's the dry season. So we're seeing radical changes playing out. Now, for me, like Ben kind of mentioned, we talked about things like the shifting of the planet, the tilt of the, or it was Ron, sorry, the tilting of the planet. And I've been tracking that for fucking years. I've been tracking it. You know, the Inuit have been trying to warn people since 2008, 2009. The sun isn't rising in the same place anymore. The planet, the stars aren't in the right alignments anymore. The winds are not blowing in the right directions anymore.
Just quick, you just said then, so the Inuit stated that this, hang on.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Really not sure what's going on. Yeah, cool. So the Inuit made that statement when they made it, right? And then a little while later, fucking Fukushima happens. Fukushima, that earthquake knocked Earth 1 degree off its axis. Now, in the zodiacal time frame, that's 73 years.
Wow.
So Earth got shifted 73 years in one earthquake, and its degrees in its universal alignments, right?
Oh,
so
shit. I didn't even think of it in that perspective.
Yeah. Now, don't quote me on the 73 years. I know it's very close. It's 70 somethings. But like these are things like that really aren't taken into aspect. It's like I sat down with a guy about 10 years ago who was doing, trying to write this fucking code to do astronomy. But I sat down with him and he's like, do you know what the funny thing is, Ben, is the zodiac moves 7 degrees every year. But that's never taken into account. They just go off the Gregorian calendar and the fucking Gregorian zodiacs, all these astronomers. Not all of them, but, you know, some of them. That's what they do it from. And that's where you get your astrological chart in the fucking newspaper and shit like that. But
Ben, you keep talking. I'll be right back. Hold on.
But the essence of it is that. So I'm born Gregorian Virgo, but in actuality, I was born in the sign of Leo astrologically. So in the time frames, like, you know, like they have specific dates. If you're born between this date and this date, you're this zodiac. No, you're fucking not, or not necessarily, unless it falls into the cycle in which you were actually born under that. Because they don't move the zodiac in that form of astronomy. But in astrology, those things shift. So it's like, it's the same as like what you've got to think of is like we went from this sun in the center and it sat in the center to planets spinning around. Then we went to, they're in this kind of revolution underneath it. And now with Zakova's latest thing on the solar minimum, she's sitting there going, what we've actually found is that the sun wobbles as well. It doesn't stay in center. It actually moves off and to and fro of center. So then you're not just doing this. The sun itself, that wobble is probably not a wobble. That's a linear wobble. It's actually probably a fucking wave, right? So you've got this oscillation that's going on as well. It's not just going in a linear corkscrew. It's literally oscillating, right? And all of that stuff there has to be taken into consideration because those are the other influences. That's where you start getting into your like 126,000, 252,000 year cycles. So what I just typed in there is like the last time these were recorded, they were turned into myths, fables, and parables, and anyone that knew them orally was burnt and killed.
Yeah.
So then the last stuff that we have recorded is fucking carved in stone. That's how important it was. Motherfuckers learned how to carve in rock. Now, whether that was done with a mineral base and they put the mineral base on and they were able to scrape it out real easy, or they had these stones that they vibrated and they just went like a laser. Doesn't matter how they fucking did it, it's in stone.
Yeah.
So we're only just now realizing that we need to correlate those stories back to or into nows.
Yep.
Because we're in those kinds of cycles. We're in stone carving cycles. We're not in books or written format. We're in carved, not even pictoglyphs. We're in carved cycles.
Yep. Well, this is it. And this is where we look at stuff like the petroglyphs and stuff like that. Now, I've been talking, I've done lots of reading about, for example, the Thunderbolts project. And some of these guys who've been literally correlating the plasma type shit to the petroglyphs. And I can't find fault with their logic, because they're showing you plasma discharge, what happens here, and then they're showing you the petroglyphs. And when if you just saw one, you go, oh, okay, well, it's just a fluke. 2, 3, oh, it's just a fluke. Except that when you realize that these images are carved all over the world, and it's not just one image, there are multiple images that can all have direct correlation to what's going on electrically, the discharges, et cetera, et cetera. It's fascinating stuff, like really fascinating.
It gets even freakier than that, because then you've got potential whole cities, ergo Giza, and like some of the Mesoamerican sites that are built astrologically perfect.
Exactly.
But then you go a step further, and you may get to speak to some elders that go, see those mountain ranges? That's this constellation. See those 2, 3 mountains? Those are that constellation. And you're like, hang on a second. And then you start looking at it on maps, and you're like, oh, snap.
Okay, well, I want to talk about something then. And I've been kind of trying to get my brain cells together to be able to do a full report on this. When you look at the plasma discharges, when we look at what happens, and again, going back to the Thunderbolts project and the kind of stuff that they're showing, and they show, for example, the pock marks on the moon, on Mars, on these various planets, and they're saying mainstream science is like, oh, that's where an asteroid hit. That's just get, and no, because they show you, and they've done the experiments, and they show you how the arcing happens with the electricity, and they can mimic those marks right down to on a sheet of clay this big. And they can do it, and you can sit there and go, it looks exactly like the fucking moon, or it looks exactly like Mars, right? Here's another one, though. Has anyone looked at the patterns, and there's people who've done artwork on this, the patterns caused by lightning, i.e. when they do electrifying, there was a guy who was doing some incredible shit on clay. He was making pots, and then charging electricity to things. So, for example, he was using hair, like the hair, long hairs from a horse's tail, and using it so that it almost works like a conduit. And he would charge, and it would do these lightning bolts over the surface, and make this incredible art, because that's what he was selling it at on the clay. If you look at the arcing effect in the so-called the burn marks, of when these, and it comes out and it goes, and you can see it. Now go to Google Earth and go look at our planet. And all of a sudden you start re-looking at these mountain ranges. That's why, Ben, you brought it up, and I'm like, look at these mountain ranges. Now, we've always been taught in school, oh, a mountain comes when the two tectonic plates go like this, and they push a mountain up. That's what they tell us. And in some cases, you can look at some certain mountain ranges and you can see that folding. You can see where you go, okay, I could see how that could definitely be a tectonic push folding up a piece of the earth to create these mountain ranges. But the vast majority, if you go back out and you look at North America, look at the west coast, especially Canada, coming down from northern BC and down that west coast, you look at those mountain ranges, they look like a massive arc discharge. You look at areas in Africa, and they look like, here, I'm going to try and pull them up. Hold on, just give me a quick second, because I need to be able to actually, no, I don't want to do that. I clicked the wrong thing.
While you're looking that up, Dee.
Yeah.
So now add on top of that most of the myths, fables, parables left spoke of how the gods created these things.
Exactly.
The gods
That's where we're
created the
going.
rivers, the mountains, you know, right from Zeus and his thunderbolts to down here, Nathangali and Bayami using the thunderbolts, and right. So, like I say, like the cycle in which we are venturing is old.
Yes.
You know, this is why the Mayan calendar became so prominent for 2012. There was another alignment there that happened. I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of them, and it was a big one. So, and it happened in and around the 21st of December 2012. So these things, like, and this is what I'm saying to my brothers over here, my aunties and my uncles, is the stories that they have, much the same as what Thunderbolt to the Gods and Velikovsky have all sort of brought forward, is the potential for us to have still been here in one of these long cycles, have survived it, and we've recorded what went down. So, and like the things, when you start venturing into these stories, the things and occurrences that are transpiring are not so strange, not so weird, not so out of place. It gets very, very interesting. Hundreds of thousands, Ron.
Okay, so I want to show you guys this, okay? I want to show you guys this. So first I'm going to show you what the hell just happened. There we go. I've got to lower the chat down. Okay? Captured lightning. I want you to take a look at this. Okay? This is what a recreation of captured lightning and the scarring that happens from it. Okay, I want to show you this. This is really interesting, not very happy to see, but okay, this is someone who's been struck by lightning. Look at the scarring pattern on their back, okay? This is someone who's been struck by lightning. Again, look at the scarring pattern. There's a very distinct pattern that you see. Now I want to show you Google Maps. Okay, this is northern BC. We are told this mountain range was caused by crustal displacement. You know, oh yeah, well, the tectonic plates moved and they pushed it up. Really? Because when you look at this, it looks a hell of a lot more like plasma discharge scarring. Take a look at this. Now, that's BC. You go down to different areas and you can look and you can see the long line. So here's another section here going down by Jasper National Park. Again, watch it going down. And you go through these different areas, okay? And you look at different places and you can go in. Look at this. This is Yellowstone, okay? Again, look at the patterning. Does this look like land folded because the pressure pushed up mountains and made valleys? Or does it look like there was a massive electrical strike that happened? Okay, this is on every continent. On every continent, you can go through.
Erosion.
Sorry? Say again. I can't hear you, hon. You went all gurgly.
I was like, no, it's water erosion. It's water erosion.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So
I'm
Yeah.
saying it very sarcastically.
I know. I can hear your sarcasm, darling. But you go through these places. Now, what's really interesting is when you get over to Africa, you see older pieces to this. Because you can almost tell the difference between the fresh, like the newer, i.e. the BC ones, they're crisp. The lines are really crisp. Now, I can find the one area I was looking in Africa where we were looking at it again. It looks older. It looks like maybe it was these ones happened many cycles ago. Egypt, that was it. Thank you, Nick. Hold on. We'll skim over here. Let me pull back out. Easier to do it this way. Come on, pull back out. There we go. Go to Egypt. Okay? When you look at Egypt, what we look at, this scarring, if you will, here we are, and over here, okay, it looks older. It looks more weathered. It doesn't look as if it's happened, say, the last cycle. It looks like maybe it happened 2-3 cycles ago, and it's had a chance to be kind of smoothed out and eroded by time. But these are all over the planet, and the vast majority of the mountain ranges that they tell us were caused by this look like massive lightning discharges. So this is something, and exactly what Ben was just saying about, for example, the stories of Zeus and his thunderbolts. So I'm sure it probably just zoomed out. It would have made this much easier.
You've also got to remember, Dee, what we've got to do is we've got to not just look at these things from now. So we have to travel back in time, people, and we have to put these things into a little bit more context, because what we're looking at right now is quite barren. So you've got to remember that the coastline was out about 400 more feet, which is about 150 meters. So these peaks were actually much higher in the atmosphere. Not only were they much higher, we were much lower in latitude. But also, on top of that, we also had massive forests.
Yep.
See, this is one of the things that everything gets taken out of context. So even though there were those 60-degree days that I was saying that were recorded, 55, 51.7, all these in Celsius, in Sydney, Australia, there were still trees everywhere.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right? Not only were there trees everywhere, there were big motherfucking trees. Big trees. Like, regardless of whether you want to look at the Salacial Age stuff and the trees that were 3 kilometers tall, we definitely had 100 to 200 meter tall trees. That is a big motherfucking tree. Now, on top of that, we also have scientific proof and evidence that things like petrification can happen almost instantaneously through massive discharges of electricity. So not only could these be just electrical charges, these could have been rather large trees or subsets of trees that were taking massive discharges from the atmosphere at that time.
Like,
and what we're seeing is things like where their roots were growing.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have to bear that in mind, because the context in which we're looking at it is not in any way close to that which it was. So we look at things like what you were just saying with Egypt. Now, Mesopotamia and all that used to be a subtropical paradise. Now, geological and archaeological things will show that certain plants and flora and fauna used to live there. But when you say older, don't think of it as in older, you can't see the discharges. Think of it as older as something else may have happened, or newer as something may have happened, like mud floods and things like that. Right? Now, on top of all of that, only 10,000 years ago, most of Europe and most of North America were covered in 2 miles of ice.
Yep. Which also
Okay.
causes a massive erosion as it slides along.
So, and not just that, but see, so in that picture you've got on right there, see that green band? We'll just call that coastal. Think of that. Oh, you've just shifted. But anyway, the browner area is actually pretty much where the glacial ices would have been. So you actually have different types of terra firma that are going on, and creation from different cycles of things. So it gets really interesting because we still may have had these discharges, but they may have been into the ice sheets and things like that. Now,
well, and this is exactly it.
Amina was talking about. Sorry, go.
No, and that's exactly it. The difference is, again, get out of there. Get out, silly dog. Go. The difference is that we have certain things that we know have happened. So things like glacial ice ages and the moving of glaciers, et cetera, et cetera. We have proposed theories of mud floods. We have these things. But they're not, again, everything seems to be looked at, even when you talk about things like the geological history of the planet, it's always looked at from this old terminology, this old science of folded mountains and things like this. And therefore, when they equate things like the moving of glaciers, they don't take into consideration, the electrical and magnetic effect of ice. And what that
on top of all,
triggered or even reacted to.
Well, the other thing as well, Anthony. The other thing is like just to throw out there, because it's slightly off topic, but it's something to think about within the context of what we're thinking. How do they charge CERN? You know, where do they draw that energy from? So when we talk about discharges, like the largest machine to have ever existed this time round, that is charged out of mostly out of a quartz reef that it's built into.
Yep. A giant quartz crystal charging pad.
Well, that energy's in there. That resonance energy is in there, and all someone really needs to do is create a device or a circuit that can tap in and draw from that form of energy and transmute it into the energy or electricity that they need. It's what Tesla did with Wardenclyffe. All he did was he found a frequency that he put into the earth that the earth could resonate back without it fucking with the earth's current resonance. And that was all he needed to do, is tap that frequency to make sure it was there, and then it was being broadcast because he'd built an antenna for it. Like, these energies exist, and when they interact, Amina was talking before about like when the moon does its thing, like the bulges on the earth, like the most science doesn't think this, we do, however. But water is the most magnetic thing we know. They just haven't figured out how to tap into it.
Okay, and that's going into that whole thing of the water being the most magnetic thing that we know. Exactly. This is one of those pieces. No one talks about it. No, it doesn't enter, so to speak, into any equations that I've seen when you talk mainstream people talking about things that are going along.
Hey, I was just looking at the world maps of copper and silver deposits. And I posted a link, and they're all in the same locations that you've just been showing us, these maps.
So hold on. See, I got to go out of the stop share to go pull up the chat again. So I put scrolling up, mining. Okay, and that's where I wanted to go to next. That's what I wanted to talk about, Because when we talk about magnetics and electric, what minerals are conductive? What minerals and ores are conductive? What type of rocks are conductive? So if we were to go and look at, say, for example, take a look at, say, I don't know, California, where all those forest fires have been. Would we find out that there's, like, say, a massive amount of iron ore underneath there? Therefore, a highly conductive region. Therefore, if you have an electrical discharge, it just goes, oh, look at all this iron in the rock, and comes up. If we were to look at Tasmania, would we find out that Tasmania's got like a shit ton of nickel and iron ore and all this conductive minerals under it?
Look at the map in the link. It shows you exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up, and then I will screen share it once I get it up.
So then add to that, people may have created structures and buildings that replicate exactly what we're talking about right now.
I can't get it. Why can it not zoom in? Wait, there we go. Okay, are you gonna zoom in? Oh, it's asking me to fucking sign in. Fuck off. I don't want to sign in. Seriously. Okay, but I could just get my thing to fucking work. I'd just like it to zoom in a little bit. No, it just wants to make me sign into some kind of an account. But we can get a basic idea just from look at this. Hold on, give me a second. I need to find Zoom again. I've lost Zoom. There we are. Okay, so let's look at even the areas that I just showed. Okay, the west coast of North America, up here in BC, etc. Look, down to the west coast here, where we saw all that massive, what I'm going to call scarring. If you look over here, the coastline there of Australia, again, where we were looking at things like this. So I'm going to have to take a look at this to see if we can't get a, see, it keeps trying to make me sign in. Damn this thing. Bear with me. Hit the back button. Come on, there we go. I wish I could zoom into this infographic here where the minerals are, because this could be a telltale piece of it. Right? When we're talking about things like electrical discharge and even magnetic, and the magnetics as well, there's going to be an interaction. Right? Do we have areas where there's highly magnetic ores in stone? And is therefore, are we going to be able to correlate it to some of this discharge, what I'm going to call discharge scarring, that we see on the planet? And then if you talk again about the whole thing of the alignments of the planets, certain aspects coming into play that tells us that, you know, this is where the cause and effect of certain alignments, certain amounts, because we're seeing the discharges right now. There has to be something at play at the moment that's causing transformers to blow up all over the world. All over the world. It's causing massive electrical storms. It's causing bizarre electrical anomalies. The electrical, because we can see those easier, because there's a physical manifestation. People going all of a sudden, we have no internet. Or we've had a power outage for some reason. I was talking to Anne last week and her lights were doing this. It was almost making me dizzy. It was hysterical because they'd just turn off and then they'd come back. And then they'd turn off and then they'd come back. When I put that questionnaire up on Facebook last weekend, how many people are experiencing more radical amounts of static discharge, i.e. you go to pet your cat and you literally almost throw the cat across the room because you shock it so badly. You touch your car door handle, your house handle, your electronics are like zapping you. These are things that are measurable effects, things that we can measure and say, okay, well, we're seeing this type of a thing happen, and no, this is not normal. Like everyone has staticky hair in the winter in North America because of central heating, but then there's also static, and then there's like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm going to give my cat cardiac arrest the next time I pet it. These are the things. Light bulbs blowing out. People saying light bulbs blowing out continuously, and that was one of the big reports I'm getting from everyone. Well, light bulbs happen where you can blow light bulbs when there's just little energy surges. When the energy is on the power line starts doing this, light bulbs blow. light bulbs burst, or they start doing the same thing where all of a sudden they get really, really dim, and then they get really, really super bright, and then they get really, really dim. This is changes to the electrical currents going through the lines. Well, all of this can be caused by electrical fields happening within the planet, which is why, for example, the PG&E incident in Paradise, California. And they're saying there were reports that said that they said they were going to turn that off. They'd already seen a problem with those power lines. They should have turned that grid off. And they didn't. Well,
on that.
Hold on, Ben. Just let me because this is the last thing I just want to say. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Is Ben from Suspicious Observers talked about the power blackout in San Diego. And I think he said it was 2015. I can't remember. And he said the reason this power blackout happened is because the power station looked at what was incoming and went, holy fuck, our lines can't possibly manage that. Shut everything down right fucking now, or we're going to blow everything. Because they could see this massive wave of electrical energy coming through, and they turned off the grid. Now, was that what PG&E was supposed to have done in Paradise? Did they know? Did they see this massive wave going in, and someone should have turned the power grid off to save it, and they didn't? And therefore, what happened is when this massive electrical surge happened from the planet or atmospherically, it just fried everything. And basically every house, every ground wire, every smart meter in Paradise just went, we don't know. But we have to put it on the table. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, because we're doing the correlative analysis, it's like, just remember that Eric Dollard, right, broke the scene some time ago, but he sort of came out again. Now, remember in his research, he stated he had started witnessing them changing the aspects of the electricity that they were sending through certain wires. Now, if we were to go back into Dollard's stuff and go, where was he looking? Like, what was the state that the governor that he was doing the research for? What area was that? I don't think it was down in Texas. It was somewhere else. You know, New Mexico. It wasn't down there. It was somewhere else, I think. But
I don't remember.
Maybe you'll find that certain areas that were doing those changeovers. It's just like in Australia, like they've been doing these electrical upgrades. It's just the same with like all these 5G things. It's like, I just read, and I think I might have mentioned on one of the shows just recently with you, is I've just read that 5G here is not only is it going to be potential of 2 kilometer distance, it's actually still fiber optic in a lot of places.
Oh, so then it's running through the ground.
But it's running through fiber optics, right? So
which means that
what they're actually doing, they're not just broad. Exactly. So they're not just broadcasting microwave via airwaves. They're doing it through fiber optics.
Yep. And that was one of the images that came out of Paradise. One of the guys in Paradise.
They totally don't need to do that.
These lines, and he showed that there were these fiber optic lines. They were big ass fucking. He said communication lines, not power, communication lines. And they were fried, like just blown up. Exactly, completely blown up. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to get into, because we've been on this now for like an hour and a half. I want to talk about the micro. I want to talk about us as human beings, as beings who are living on this planet, because we are taking hit after hit after hit, and it is having physiological, emotional, mental effects on the planet. Now, last week we had 3 days in a row where we had KP0 days. I've never seen 3 days in a row of KP0. I've seen, like 6 hours where it drops to KP0. Now, KP0 means the magnetic field of the Earth is fucking pretty much at its barest minimum. Try and find what an actual measurement is on KP0, though. That's not so easy. Okay? We had 3 days in a row last week. And I think it was the 28th, Jules, I think it was the 28th, where the KP0 maintained for about 20 hours. I've never, ever seen this on the charts before. Now, we know when it hits KP0, we're talking scientifically proven that it causes heart attacks, that it causes massive heart issues and psychological issues, that if people have a tendency, if they're already, let's say they're already teetering like this with depression, or we'll call it bipolarism, if you will, whatever, because I don't necessarily believe that whole shit. But if people are already teetering there, when you have a KP0 day, all of a sudden, you have massive physiological, proven scientifically, massive physiological and emotional and mental repercussions of that to us, because our magnetic field obviously mirrors what's going on within the Earth. And even if we look at it solely from the fact of the magnetic field being a shield, and therefore when it gets really, really tight and small, there are more cosmic radiation coming in, there are more cosmic energy coming in, etc. There is a physiological effect. In the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I've seen a lot of people taken out. I myself got taken out several days where I literally, it was incapable almost of functioning. I couldn't think straight. It was as if someone just kept wiping a magnet across my fucking hard drive, and I'd get halfway, you'd leave here, you'd walk down the hallway, and boom. You'd have no fucking clue what you were doing. Why am I walking down this hallway? To the point of literally standing in the middle of the kitchen multiple times in the middle of cooking dinner and literally going, what am I cooking? Wait, you actually have to physically look at what you have on the stove to remind yourself what it is you're fucking doing? The physiological effects of what we're seeing are radical at the moment. Radical. Anne, do you want to throw in here?
Yeah. There's so much to say, really. Well, first of all, from a homeopath's point of view, we all have an optimum frequency. We're all different. We have different susceptibilities. We have different inheritances, and different things that aggravate us. So in health, we are holding our optimum frequency. That means we are as balanced. We are the best that we can be, right?
Yep.
Now, when the shields are down on the planet, and consequently and subsequently on ourselves, that disturbs or causes a disturbance in our field. And that disturbance shows itself as an emergence of our tendencies. We all have different tendencies. Some people easily get sad, some people easily get angry, some people get heart stuff. We all have our own individual pattern of wounds and weakness, I suppose you could say.
Yep.
And when our energy field is disturbed, our body, our bodies, as long as we want to stay alive, we will always, the life tendency is always to rebalance, given any possibility. We'll try and do that. So our body's attempt to come back into balance is usually the emergence of particular symptoms. It's funny, that they're part of our body's, attempt to become whole again. So this is what we're seeing. I think all of us have felt these surges of energy. It depends on how quickly you can rebalance, whether or not the surge will lead to other symptoms. It also, I think there's an awful lot more to it than I can possibly say or even know at this point. But one of the things that Ron is just putting up there, we must shield ourselves. Now, what is also, Edward Vise put a good post in on Fuckers yesterday, I think it was, about how difficult it is for us to be grounded when the magnetics seem to be changing. And I think I said this on a show a while ago, I'm not sure, that in all native rituals, they begin by connecting with the directions, connecting with the north, south, east, west, below and above. And that is finding yourself in place. Now, as these directions are changing, it's very difficult for us to actually be properly aligned in space. And this has been shown to cause anxiety. It's been proven to cause a state of anxiety when you actually don't know where you are physically in space, in this apparent avatar, whatever the heck it is, anyway. This is, I did come to the conclusion this week that we are playing a quantum multidimensional chess game. So what I'm addressing here is just the place I am in consciousness right now.
This physical.
In this moment, in this poor meat suit that's having a terribly hard time. And the earth is ungrounded at the moment, yes. So when you unground, you become susceptible, even more disturbed. Your energy, your frequency is even more disturbed and susceptible to disturbance. Now, this creates a perfect storm situation because everybody is going through stuff at the moment because we are collectively disturbed. So people who are extra sensitive are taking on and are not shielded, are taking on all sorts of things. Particularly, I'd be very aware of children going into school, and a child will always try and rebalance. Children and animals rebalance a dynamic. They'll rebalance a family, they'll rebalance a schoolroom. So it's very important to just take note of how your children are doing at the moment. Yeah. Now, how do we rebalance frequency meditation, solfeggio frequencies? One of the things that, well, first of all, as we know, we are immensely powerful beings, and we just need to bring that into, as soon as you bring that into your awareness, I need to balance. That in some cases does it straight away. There are many, many techniques you can use. One of, you can stand barefoot on the ground, you can earth, you can consciously distribute your energy all the way down to your feet. Because when we unground, we have a tendency to move our energy up and out of the body.
Almost floating above us instead of...
Yes. Yeah, and that makes you very, very susceptible in the heart area, in the solar plexus. And wow, Ron is showing some great big lumps of grounding and protective minerals there. Minerals are great. I work with rocks myself. Nature, contact with nature, holding trees. Yeah, I've got shungite here too.
Yeah, I've got shungite all over my monitor is covered in shungite and calcite and fluorite and
yeah, we are walking rock shops. Swinging crystals. Boy. So yeah, crystals are very good. Of course, I work with essences. So you can rescue remedy is widely available, and that's very useful as a way of helping somebody who's going into, if you are going out there in the world, you need to be aware that everybody is disturbed. Everybody's energy, everybody's frequency is disturbed at the moment. So it's really just really important for us to be more aware and more disciplined about our own energy, because if you can be the rock or the lighthouse, you can really affect the people around you. You can help people to hold,
Yep. But we have to also be aware of ourselves. Like, unfortunately, speaking from a personal place, you are that rock, that lighthouse for so often that you almost get to the point where you yourself are depleted. and then you can no longer stand there and keep holding it, and then you have to take a break. We have to be a little more gentle with ourselves. When you feel that, if at all possible, you need to go take some time for yourself to rebuild your own energy. Whether it's just go laying in your bed and having quiet time, go having a hot bath, whatever it is that works for you, we have to take that time. We have to take those moments and put ourselves in time out to rebalance and recharge ourselves.
Yeah. Another thing I would say, Danny, that is really important for unfuckers, particularly anyone who's really feeling this disturbance, is to take yourself off the hamster wheel. You've got to get off the hamster wheel. So for people who do, you know, time, that notion of linear time is becoming less and less tolerable for most of us. So you just have to consciously step off it, you know, step out of linear time and say, you're not having it, no thanks. And put a stop to that. And it does work. What type of essences can we smolder in our surroundings? Frankincense. Now, frankincense is an essential oil. What's that? Ben. Give me time, Ben.
I'm always joking. Aconite. I like my aconite. I have bottles of aconite literally all over the house, and which is, as Anne would say, is the shock. The shock
remedy in homeopathy, very, very useful. Where, you know, you find people walking around like, what's going on? Holy fuck.
Yep.
So
here, have an aconite. Just walk around down the street and just toss them in everyone's mouth. There's an aconite. An aconite. Just go.
So essences, Ron, are different to essential oils. Essences, to make an essence, you simply take a rock and put it in water, or beside water. In fact, you don't even have to put it in water. And you ask the water to pick up, you have to talk to the water, of course, you ask the water to pick up the energy of the rock and hold it and then vibrate it out to people, either by ingesting, applying topically, or diffusing it in the atmosphere. Flower essences are very well-known. Rescue Remedy by Bach. That essence was made in about 1930. Oh, there's some of my essences, actually.
My current two favorites of Anne's, The Works, which is everything, and Settle. Literally, they're right beside my desk at all times.
Yeah, The Works is an existential rescue, because that's what we're finding at the moment as well, is that even for those of us who've been looking at this stuff, and we don't know what the fuck's going on, there are a lot of people who are just waking up and going, I don't know what the fuck's going on, and I don't want to be here. I've had it, I'm finished, I'm in this place like it's a void, and I just don't want to be here. So that's what The Works is for, existential rescue. And you will find people coming to a place where they are parasuicidal or suicidal.
I want to talk on that too, Anne.
Yeah, that's happening with a lot of people. It's like, and young people, I've come across a lot of really, really depressed young people, because with all the information that's coming out, the young people who are looking at this information are going, what's the point? What's the fuck? You know, I always thought a 13-year-old, I was told about a 13-year-old last week who just, this little kid is so bright, he reads New Scientist for fun. He's lying on the sofa going, we're fucked, you know, what's the point? So we have got to be here to hold
a space.
Yeah.
This is
I find this really emotional, actually, because I think it's so hard for the kids, because they see all the adults around them just can't fix it. You know, adults are meant to fix it. And we don't know. So it's a hard one. It's a really hard one.
If they have come from families, if they're in families where, you know, the parents are completely in this construct and completely under the spell of the brainwashing, there's nothing coming from, like, the parents can't even recognize what the kids are going through on that level, there is nothing there. There is nothing there for them. And that's kind of the shit that I've been talking about for the last few months. Like, we need to really reach out to these kids and be a lodestone, be like kind of like the lighthouse type thing, where they've got somewhere they can go to, even if there's not concrete,
there is heaps.
Something.
There is heaps. There is heaps. There is heaps. They're just not being shown it. This is the shitty part of fucking living in the hills, people, is there are these amazing people out here doing some crazy shit. But before any of it can really come out, it actually has to be made safe. And that is the very shit situation we find ourselves in. Because there really is a lot going on. A lot. It's just like things have changed that dramatically. I don't know, even in the last 5 years in the police state side of things and all the rest of it, the options and opportunities that are out there don't fit with everything else that is going on.
Exactly.
That's the hard part about it. It's like regardless of where you want to fucking put Elon Musk on the Illuminati scale, like, some of the shit that motherfucker has got going on is quite fantastical. The unfortunate thing is when you look at the picture being broadcast, it's hard to see that in a good light. It's hard to see a lot of things in a good light. It's
not even about seeing it, it's about feeling it, right? And this is what I want to get back to, is the fact of, we can talk about all these things, and we can talk about it intellectually, and we can define it, and we can look, and we can draw parables, etc., of all this information we've discussed over the last hour and a half. But how we feel in a moment is really important to also focus on, in the fact of, because we are feeling, and we are being inundated with these emotional and mental responses that are obviously, they're coming from somewhere. They're coming from somewhere. One of the things I want to talk about, okay, because we talked about the suicide, I've never seen, and I talked about this on Wednesday, I have never seen the amount of suicides that I've seen in the last month, ever. And I'm talking things like almost every other day, every 2-3 days, someone else on my Facebook has just lost someone else to suicide. A brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, an uncle, a nephew. It is unbelievable. And I'm saying to people, like, let's all look out for our families. And I don't just mean our biological families, but our emotional families, our soul families, if you will. Keep an eye on those people who you know are having a hard time, because maybe what they need is, more than anything else, is a hug. I know that sounds really kind of like a platitude, but sometimes people just need physical contact. They need like a hug from someone to just tell them it's okay, just keep going. The other thing is animals. I had a very emotional conversation with Dawn Hamhart last night. Animals are dying left, right, and center. Pets. It's unbelievable at the moment. To the point, every single day, someone has lost a pet, and not just old pets who have suddenly got, like your 15-year-old cat or your 13, 14-year-old dog. I'm talking young animals are just leaving. Okay? And this is something I want people to be really, really aware of. Like, we need to, I'm struggling with my dogs. Groot has lost a lot of weight over the last 2 months. we can't, and we've treated him for all the things that you would normally treat him for, worms, parasites, etc., etc. We've had to bow down to actually using fucking pills, have done all the natural things, etc. I'm feeding him 3 and 4 times a day, meals, full-on meals. He gets more table, everything. And his weight is just barely maintaining. And he goes to where he starts to shake, and he shakes. Well, I'm like, well, we do that. We do this too. Like, you have those moments where you can feel your whole body is shaking. And he'll come to me and climb on my lap, and he is shaking so hard. He's a young dog. He's only 2.5 years old. There's things that are happening. And I wish I had a response. I wish I had an answer to say to people what we can do to help our animals. Is it because they are literally grounded? Their bare feet are on the ground. So when we have these massive magnetic and electrical fluctuations that are going through the planet, they're taking the full-on hits of it? I don't know. I don't know.
Or, Danny, perhaps the other thing that occurs to me is that they are also trying to balance us. And so it's taken a huge amount of energy for them to do that. Perhaps that's the reason. I know the dog here is just ravenously hungry. You know, it's like, boy.
Yeah. There's a lot of shit going on. And it has been very, very hard. I mean, my kids have had really hard times, physically, emotionally, mentally. And all we can do is just try and be there for them. I hate to say it, but like you've got to just, for me, it's like holding people. Literally, I'm physically holding people and grounding them with my own energy, like using my energy to help ground them. Because it's the only, in the moment, that's the only thing I can think of. My go-to is to be like, okay, I can flood this person with my energy and try and help their energy ground and just, or I haven't been even using the word ground, is rebalance. That's the word that goes through my head when I'm doing it. It's just like rebalance, rebalance, rebalance. Find that equilibrium and help them. And to the dogs as well. And hugging them and just being like, okay, just rebalance, rebalance. You can do this, and just till the shaking stops, until the emotional shaking even stops. But we have to be aware of this. Like these are the kinds of things that we are seeing right now. And Ann and I had a long conversation yesterday. We had a really long, I was in a bad place yesterday. No, go. I was in a really bad place yesterday. I seriously was struggling on every level. And then we have to open it up, and then we have to look at, like what Ann said, the multidimensional. Because again, we have to look at the aspects of like, what the hell are we doing in some other reality? What, you know, we look at things like dream time and meditation time, and we look at these things that we're seeing, we're feeling, etc. It is exactly like, for me, I see it exactly like what Ann said, a multi-dimensional chess game is what it feels like we're playing right now. This avatar and this physicality, we're seeing, feeling, experiencing these things, but there are other things playing out in other, what do you want to call it? Dimensions, timelines, levels. Because too many people are feeling this. Too many people are bringing these experiences to the table that we can just say, oh, it's... Go ahead, Ben.
We've been brought up in a multiple of generations being led to think that we are in the sweet spot. So,
yeah.
And we think that this planet is like as regular as your fucking clock on your wall, as long as you change the batteries. Like that's the whole thing. It's like Ron was asking before, like the last mini ice age was 1000 AD, right? The last major ice age was 10,000 years ago, 10 to 12,000 years ago. So like, and it was an ice age for, I don't know, I think it was like long time. So it's like the world's been an ice age more than it hasn't. But in this, let's say last, I don't know, what do we classify a generation as?
25 years?
Not now, but what are we like? Oh, really? Fucking hell. So a generation is basically as soon as you can have kids.
That's how I classify it. But
depending on what country you're in. Okay, that's all right. I sort of thought, I thought a generation may be like 60 years, but it doesn't matter. I just like for definition. So let's say for like 8 generations, we've been living in what we've really sort of thought of as really stable. Hey, this is cool. Sun goes up, sun goes down. Sometimes something gets the fuck in front of it. Oh, it's okay, it's the moon. We plant here, we plant there, we plant here, we plant there, we don't plant there. We make sure we stay inside because it gets fucking cold there. Like la-di-da. Like, and that's like fucking, that's what we've done. But like we sort of said at the start of the talk, it's like the first lot of science came from mapping out there to what was actually transpiring down here. So they didn't necessarily plant on the full moon at all / ever, because the moon steals shit. It's an energy thief. So they planted 3 days either side. You know, it's like the ants. They're real smart. They go hard on the full moon, and then when it goes dark, they stop. And there's different plants that interact with these cycles and energies, and they do stuff. It's like I think I've just identified, you can't see it because it's not the morning like it normally is. But there's this fucking wicked 5-petaled flower that has literally been budding for months and months and months. And I'm pretty sure Venus just came out of somewhere. And it's basically one of these flowers that shows Venus's transits. So, you know, it gets really, really interesting because it's so far out there, you know. We sit there and we go, oh, to do that, you'd have to have telescopes. And no, you don't. The plants actually tell us what's going on up there.
We've lost
and,
that.
And like what we're trying to do.
That's that knowledge that we've completely lost.
No. We haven't completely lost it. That's what I'm trying to say. We haven't at all. It's just fucking hard to get at it right now.
Well, but when I say we, I mean
out.
as in,
So
in
like I've
greater society. In greater society, no one uses the farmers' almanac anymore. No one listens to the farmers. I've always joked for years that you could here in Gozo, especially when I lived here 25 years ago, you never listened to the news to what the weather was going to be. You went and talked to. I had a really good friend of ours, and Chinsu was like 85 years old and still went to his fields every single day. And if you wanted to know when to plant something, you'd say to Che Chinsu, "We're thinking of doing a barbecue on the beach. What day next week do you think?" And he'd be like, "I'm going to look. Say Wednesday. Wednesday will be a good day." And he was always right. He was fucking right 100% of the time. You talk to the old farmer and the old fisherman. It was the same thing. The fisherman knew. The fisherman, he's not an old guy by any means. He'd say he's like in his late 30s, early 40s. And one of the fishermen here, I chat with him because when I walk down the steps, he's always there fixing his nets. And we always chat. And he'll say things like, yeah, but don't worry. Like, yeah, it's really wavy today, but it'll be by 5 o'clock, it'll all change. And fucking, I'm telling you, 5 o'clock, waves are gone. We've lost most of society has lost touch with that knowledge.
I would like to propose that some of the confusion is that knowledge. Hang on.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'd like to propose that some of this confusion is not just weirdness, but it is this knowledge trying to come back and through. which is why so much of this stuff is coming out on the platter right now.
Yeah.
It's not just the fact that it's where we're digging and all the rest of it. Universe is literally creating access. And not in a way that we didn't have access to it before, just awareness. And that a lot of these things are tools being presented. It's like down these ways, they say that the Karaji men, the magic men, not the medicine people, but the ones that basically don't live in the village at all, they're out there and they come in every now and then, they're like, right, this is about to go down. If they don't pass on their knowledge and take on an apprentice, they will get sick. And that sickness will kill them.
Yep.
And this is like, so when we start looking at it, it's like cancers. When did they start becoming prevalent? Right? Is this when the solar minimum, grand solar minimum, really started kicking in? And that these are blockages. Cancers are blockages that people are, and they're not actually necessarily. And fucking don't let this anyone give them an advantage to not be healthy if they're not well. But a lot of these things can be much more, like Anne was talking about, emotionally attached. And what we find is when we start releasing these old emotional attachments and go-to places that are actually, pain body associated or whatever it is, or just non-beneficial in general, that they're starting to show in blockages, they're starting to show in sicknesses, they're starting to show in cancers, they're starting to show in all these things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And of course then the actions and then the actions of ignorant men and women and he, she, ze, blah blah blah, not to offend any fucking one, but ignorance is not helping the matter.
No, it's interesting because, okay, so someone just said, Jules just said, we aren't the masters in all things. We need people like Ben to tell us about plants, Danny about essential oils, and about crystals and crystal essences, etc. And we need to bring the astronomers and the astrologers exactly to the table and all of this. Interesting. And it's about, I was going to say insight. That's not it. Instinct. And listening to ourselves. So, for example, talking about essential oils, I was saying to Anne just the other day, as frequencies shift, as our frequencies shift, and as the planetary frequencies shift, there's a different frequency to the essential oils as well. So, for example, I have my go-tos. Like, it's one of these, you can get trapped into habit. You can get trapped into habit. Got a headache, reach for the lavender. Got a headache, reach for the lavender. Got a headache, reach for the lavender. And then all of a sudden you realize that the lavender no longer works for that piece. And I started making some mixes this week when Nick was sick. And your hand reaches in, and I have my case, I can't show you unfortunately, but I have my case of all my essential oils. And you think, okay, muscle spasms, you're already going into your head and you're combining the list of what you need. And your hand reaches in and then goes, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. And then you reach for something else that would be normal, that you would say, okay, camphor for this, and then go, no, that's it's not right. It's not right. And then you can't go by habit. You can no longer just use the habitual pieces that you would reach for. We now have to actually feel into it again and start going, okay, this feels right. And it may not be something, it could be an essential oil that is not known for, say, muscle spasms. But I know that that's the right one because we're now taking into consideration the frequencies are shifting, which is a frequency deals with everything, planetary, ourselves, that plant, that crystal essence. All of these things are shifting, and it's right now becoming really, really important. I feel more so than ever before that we have to listen to our gut instinct. We must listen to pay attention to what you reach for. Pay attention to what you're craving. Pay attention to the little things that come at you. Pay attention to the colors. that you're comfortable in, because the colors are also frequencies. Pay attention to the foods that you suddenly want to eat. Why? Because you know what? There's always something in it that we need to listen to ourselves on. Yes, Ben, before you lose your arms.
Another thing. Well, I can't remember whether we. Oh yeah, I'll let my internet do its thing first.
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
I don't know whether we did this. I don't know whether we did this chat publicly or this was one of my rants to you and Anne, stupid at some time. But I had this thought about these whole pole shifts and yada yadas and blah-de-blahs. And essentially I started thinking, it's Tesla said, energy, right? You've got energy. Electricity is a form or a derivative of. Light is a derivative of. These sorts of things are derivatives of energy.
Yep.
So if on the grand master scale of things, Earth's not the center of the universe, then it's going to have a polarity, right? Or is it? This is the trip or the flip. So in essence, it's if there's a polarity, not a pole, not all poles, and not a single as in but a polarity, a charge. And there is a charge shift transpiring, then everything shifts. And this is what we were going on about. It was me, you, and Anne on the messenger thing. So essentially, it's if the sun was positively charged and could be, let's just say, seen in its coloration, its chromatographic showings, that of a red or yellow sun, a shift in charge may have been seen in the lowering of that. It's now remembering that heat is the variance between something it was and something it is, and the build up of that.
Now that's another whole show.
Temperature and heat are just the variance between. I know, but this is trying to put things into context. So if we have that and the sun has gone negative, then Mercury goes positive, Venus goes negative, and Earth goes positive. Okay? Yeah, no, I get it, Ron, and that's just what I'm saying. But let's say the sun was negative, and I'm not sure which way it is. But if we have a polarity change that is occurring, and we're seeing it in the other planets, in the way that their temperatures are changing, the ways that they're shifting, some of their orbits are altering, some of their axes are altering. It's not just Earth that's getting it. So there is a shift of sorts and energies. And what spurred this was Ron talking about the chakras. Essentially, everything has to go through this shift. So if we were positively charged and the Earth was negatively charged and the Earth is going positively charged, then we are getting negatively charged because that is the way of the electric universe.
Or something along those lines, because you just lost me. But that's good, Ben, just hold off, just because that is literally, we're already 8 minutes over time. So I just don't even want to let's do that. That'll be the next conversation, the next discussion. We're going to get ready to kind of close it down from here. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to call out, hi guys on the Twitch live stream. Unfortunately, I couldn't open the Twitch chat because I was having difficulties. Ben always fries my brain, but that's okay. I still love him anyway. Ben and I are setting up a show where there's going to be a new show that's going to be launching sometime, hopefully soon, within this month, right, Ben? We're all going to get this act together of ours, you and I, right? Right?
Yeah, you wait to see what we got set up.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it'll be interesting.
And you and I need to sit down and have a conversation with John about scheduling, so we'll figure that out. there is going to be another new show, so it'll be there'll be the Unfuck It on Wednesday, and then there's going to be another show that Ben and I will host together, and that will be one day of the week. It might be Friday night. I don't know. I have to look at Ben's schedule and how screwy that gets. Hopefully, we will have that organized in the next week or two, right, Ben? Right? In the next week or two, we'll have that organized. See, I have to push him sometimes because time is irrelevant. So tonight we have the Unfuckers movie night. Don't forget. So we're watching Fringe again tonight. I have no idea what episodes we're on. Are we on 11 and 12? I've lost track of what episodes we're on. Season 1, I think episodes 11 and 12 for Fringe tonight. And Wednesday night will be the UnFuckIt discussion at the regular same bat time, same bat channel as normal. And maybe Ben will be there. I don't know. Ben, are you working Thursday morning? He's thinking about it.
It's Waitangi Day coming up. I got to go dig a hole, and we're doing a hangi and shit this coming weekend. So I'll maybe.
Okay, maybe. We'll see. Anyways, I'm going to say good night to you guys over there on the Asia time zone, and good morning to everyone over here in Europe and our few diehards in North America, like Star and Earl, who've managed to pull themselves at some god-awful time in the morning in North America to be here for it. I love you guys, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye.
It's one small step